10 men from Canaan are brought before Egypt's governor, and bow with their faces to the ground. They have come because their households are running out of food. The ruler before them controls access to the grain that may keep their children alive, but they do not know that he is the brother they once stripped, sold, and abandoned. Joseph knows them immediately. For years he had lived without the power to prevent what others did to him. His brothers threw him into a cistern. Traders carried him into slavery. Potiphar's wife falsely accused him, and an Egyptian prison held him. Now the positions have been reversed so completely that a word from Joseph could detain his brothers, send them away hungry, or bring the full weight of Egyptian authority against them. What does a wounded man do when the people who harmed him finally stand within his power? Genesis chapters 42 through 50 answer that question slowly. Joseph does not reveal himself at once, and the story does not reduce forgiveness to a sudden feeling. His brothers will be questioned, confined, fed, frightened, welcomed, and tested before the family is openly reconciled. Then the account widens beyond one household. Joseph must use his authority during a famine that threatens Egypt and Canaan, and the measures that preserve life will also place Egypt's land and people under Pharaoh's control. These chapters therefore give us more than a reunion scene. They show authority used to uncover whether violent men have changed, to preserve a covenant family, to organize a nation during disaster, and finally to refuse revenge. They also show that even Joseph's extraordinary power has limits. Genesis ends with his body in a coffin, his family still in Egypt, and his hope fixed on a deliverance that he will not live to see. When Joseph's brothers arrive, the famine has already spread beyond Egypt. The 7 abundant years announced through Pharaoh's dreams have ended, and Joseph has filled storehouses throughout the land. Genesis chapter 41 closes with people coming from many countries to buy grain because the shortage is severe everywhere. Back in Canaan, Jacob hears that Egypt has food and sends 10 sons to buy it. Benjamin remains with him. Benjamin and Joseph are the 2 sons of Rachel, the wife Jacob loved most, and Jacob believes Joseph has been dead for years. He cannot bear the thought that harm might come to Rachel's remaining son. The 10 brothers join the stream of foreigners seeking food. Joseph is not hidden somewhere behind the machinery of government. Genesis says he is the governor who sells grain to the people, so they must appear before him. They see an Egyptian official with an Egyptian name, dressed in Egyptian authority and speaking through an interpreter. More than 20 years have passed since they last saw Joseph as a frightened young man. They have no reason to imagine that this powerful figure could be him. Joseph, however, sees the faces of his past. As they bow, he remembers the dreams in which his brother's sheaves surrounded his sheaf and bowed down. The dreams have reached fulfillment, but their fulfillment does not tell Joseph how to treat the men at his feet. He speaks harshly and treats them as strangers. He asks where they have come from, then accuses them of being spies who have entered Egypt to find its vulnerable places. They deny the charge and describe themselves as honest men, all sons of one father. In trying to prove their story, they reveal exactly what Joseph wants to know: their father is alive, their youngest brother is at home, and another brother, they say, is no more. Joseph's accusation is false, and the text does not pause to defend every feature of his method. It does show that the charge gives him a way to test their account and require Benjamin's appearance without disclosing his own identity. At first, Joseph says that one brother may return for Benjamin while all the others remain confined. He then places all 10 in custody for 3 days. On the 3rd day, Joseph changes the arrangement. He says that he fears God, and for that reason he will allow most of them to carry grain home to their hungry households. One brother will remain behind while the others bring Benjamin back. Joseph says he wants proof that they are telling the truth, but he is already showing them mercy. He will not keep 9 families waiting without food while one man travels to Canaan. The brothers begin talking among themselves, apparently assuming the Egyptian ruler cannot understand. Their present confinement brings back the memory they have managed to carry for years. They admit that they are guilty concerning Joseph because they saw his deep distress and heard him pleading, yet refused to listen. Reuben reminds them that he warned them not to sin against the boy, and he interprets their trouble as a reckoning for Joseph's blood. Genesis now reveals a detail the earlier account of the sale did not state directly. Joseph begged them from the cistern. The brothers ate while he cried for help, and now the sound of that pleading returns to them in an Egyptian court. Their confession is not yet spoken to Joseph, but it reveals that the past has never become morally neutral in their own minds. Joseph understands every word. He turns away and weeps, then regains control, selects Simeon, and has him bound in their sight. He orders the servants to fill the brothers' bags with grain, return each man's payment inside his sack, and give them provisions for the journey. The men leave with food they desperately need, but they do not experience the return money as generosity. When one of them discovers his silver at a lodging place, their hearts fail. They ask what God has done to them because they fear that the money will make them appear guilty of theft. At home, they tell Jacob about the severe Egyptian governor and the condition he imposed. When every sack is emptied, each man's money is there. Jacob sees danger gathering around his family. Joseph is gone, Simeon is detained, and now the others want to take Benjamin. Reuben offers the lives of his own 2 sons if he fails to return with Benjamin, an alarming pledge that gives Jacob no real security. Jacob refuses to let the boy go. The decision lasts only as long as the grain. Genesis chapter 43 opens with the famine still severe, and eventually the food from Egypt is consumed. Jacob tells his sons to return for a little more. Judah answers that there will be no return unless Benjamin goes with them. Judah's proposal differs from Reuben's. He does not offer somebody else's children as collateral. He makes himself responsible for Benjamin, and promises to bear the blame for the rest of his life if he fails to bring him home. This is the same Judah who once suggested selling Joseph rather than leaving him to die in the pit. The change is not complete merely because he makes a promise, but the promise prepares us to see whether he will accept its cost. Jacob finally agrees. He sends a gift of the best products still available in the land, including balm, honey, gum, myrrh, pistachio nuts, and almonds. He sends double the money so the returned silver can be repaid, and he entrusts the men to God Almighty, asking that they receive mercy before the governor. His final words admit how little control he has. If he is bereaved, he is bereaved. When the brothers stand before Joseph again, Benjamin is with them. Joseph tells his steward to bring the men into his house and prepare a meal. Instead of hearing this as an invitation, the brothers assume it is a trap connected with the money. They approach the steward at the door and carefully explain that they brought the original payment back. The steward answers with peace. He tells them not to fear, says that their God and the God of their father gave them treasure in their sacks, and insists that he received their payment. Then Simeon is released and brought to them. Water is provided for their feet, fodder for their donkeys, and a place to prepare the gift. Joseph arrives at noon. The brothers present their gift and bow again. He asks first about their welfare, and then about their elderly father. When they confirm that Jacob is alive, they bow once more. Joseph sees Benjamin, his mother's son, and gives him a blessing, but emotion rises so quickly that Joseph has to leave the room. He weeps privately, washes his face, returns, and orders the meal to be served. The seating arrangement preserves the disguise. Joseph eats by himself, the Egyptian officials eat separately, and the Hebrews have their own table because the Egyptians will not share a meal with them. Yet the brothers are seated in exact order from the oldest to the youngest. They look at one another in astonishment, wondering how the governor could know. Portions are sent from Joseph's table, and Benjamin receives 5 times as much as anyone else. Earlier in the family story, Jacob's visible preference for Joseph helped inflame the brothers' jealousy. Now another son of Rachel receives unmistakable favor in front of them, but Genesis records no outburst. Whether Joseph intended the portions as another test or simply as a sign of affection, the scene lets us observe what the brothers do when the youngest is preferred. They feast with Joseph, and for the moment the tension eases. The most severe part of the test comes the next morning. Joseph orders that their sacks be filled with as much grain as they can carry. Their money is returned again, and Joseph's silver cup is placed inside Benjamin's sack. Soon after the brothers leave, the steward overtakes them and accuses them of repaying good with evil by stealing the governor's cup. They are so certain of their innocence that they propose a reckless penalty. Whoever has the cup should die, and the others will become servants. The steward narrows the consequence. Only the person found with the cup will remain as a servant. Everyone else will be free. The search begins with Reuben and moves down through the brothers in birth order. The cup appears exactly where Joseph commanded, in Benjamin's sack. At this moment, the brothers have a path back to Canaan. An Egyptian official has declared the others innocent. They can leave Benjamin behind, return with grain, and tell Jacob that his favored son brought disaster on himself. They do not leave. The brothers tear their clothes, reload their donkeys, and every one of them returns to the city. When they fall before Joseph, Judah speaks for the group. He does not know how the cup came to be in Benjamin's sack, but he says that God has uncovered the guilt of the brothers. Judah is speaking about more than the missing cup. Their earlier treatment of Joseph still stands behind the crisis. Joseph again offers to keep only Benjamin, while the rest go home in peace, bringing the test to its clearest point. Will the sons of Leah, Bilhah, and Zilpah protect Rachel's favored son, or will they preserve themselves by sacrificing him? Judah steps forward. His speech in Genesis chapter 44 is the longest sustained speech in the Joseph account, and most of it is about Jacob. Judah recounts the governor's questions, the father's reluctance, the loss of Benjamin's brother, and the bond between the old man's life and the life of the boy. He does not complain that Jacob's love has again been distributed unfairly. Judah now shows that he understands his father's grief instead of resenting it. Then Judah reaches the promise he made. He guaranteed Benjamin's safety, so he asks to remain in Egypt as a servant in Benjamin's place. He cannot return and watch the sorrow that would overtake his father. Years earlier, Judah helped sell one of Rachel's sons into slavery, and carried home the evidence that allowed Jacob to believe the boy was dead. Now he is willing to become a slave so Rachel's other son can go home alive. Joseph has not heard a complete confession made directly to him, but he has seen evidence that the brothers are no longer prepared to save themselves by abandoning the favored son. In particular, Judah has become capable of costly responsibility. Joseph's testing has sometimes troubled readers, and the narrative leaves room for honest discomfort. He uses fear, concealment, confinement, and planted evidence. People who have been hurt are not given a general command here to reproduce Joseph's exact process. Within this family story, however, the sequence reveals something Joseph could not learn from a quick embrace. The brothers who once ignored his pleas now return together for Benjamin, and Judah offers himself in the boy's place. Joseph can no longer control his emotion. At the opening of Genesis chapter 45, he orders every Egyptian attendant out of the room. Then he weeps so loudly that people outside hear him, and the report reaches Pharaoh's household. His first words are direct. He tells them that he is Joseph and asks whether his father is really still alive. The brothers cannot answer. The governor, who knows their family, understands their language, and holds their future, has just named himself as the brother they sold. Their silence is not difficult to understand. Joseph asks them to come near. He identifies himself again, this time adding the part they cannot deny. He is their brother whom they sold into Egypt. Reconciliation begins without changing the history. Joseph does not say that they misunderstood one another or that the years of slavery and confinement no longer matter. He then tells them not to be crushed by distress or anger against themselves because God sent him ahead to preserve life. 2 years of famine have passed, and 5 more remain. God sent Joseph ahead to preserve a remnant of the family, and keep many people alive. In the language of the chapter, the brother sent away as a slave has become a kind of father to Pharaoh, lord of Pharaoh's household, and ruler throughout Egypt. Joseph is not denying human responsibility when he says that God sent him. He has just said plainly that his brother sold him. Genesis allows both statements to remain true at once. The brothers chose an evil act for which they were guilty, while God worked through and beyond their intention to place Joseph where he could preserve life. Providence does not rename the sale as goodness. It means that the brothers' evil purpose did not gain final control over the outcome. Joseph now uses his authority to bring the entire household near him. He tells the brothers to hurry home, bring Jacob and all their families, and settle in Goshen, where he can provide for them during the 5 years still to come. He embraces Benjamin and weeps, then kisses all his brothers. Only after that are they able to speak with him. The news pleases Pharaoh and his officials. Pharaoh supplies wagons for the children, wives, and elderly father, and promises the best of Egypt's land. Joseph gives the brothers provisions and changes of clothing. Benjamin receives additional silver and clothing, but again there is no report of jealousy. As the men leave, Joseph tells them not to quarrel along the way, a brief acknowledgement that one emotional reunion has not erased every old habit in this family. In Canaan, the brothers announce that Joseph is alive and rules Egypt. Jacob's heart becomes numb because he cannot believe them. For more than 20 years, he has organized his understanding of the family around Joseph's death. The words of the sons who deceived him cannot immediately reverse that grief. Then Jacob sees the wagons Joseph sent. The visible provision confirms the impossible report, and Jacob's spirit revives. He does not speak first about Egypt's grain or Joseph's rank. He says that Joseph is alive and that he will go see his son before he dies. Jacob begins the journey but stops at Beersheba, near the southern edge of Canaan, where he offers sacrifices to the God of his father Isaac. Going to Egypt can save the household from famine, yet leaving the promised land carries its own fear. Abraham once went down to Egypt during a famine, and God had later warned Isaac not to do the same. Jacob needs more than Pharaoh's wagons before moving the covenant family there. God speaks to him in visions of the night. He identifies himself as the God of Jacob's father, tells Jacob not to fear going down to Egypt, and promises to make him a great nation there. God promises to go down with Jacob and to bring him up again. Jacob will die in Egypt with Joseph beside him, but his body will be carried back to Canaan, and his descendants will one day be brought out. The family then travels in the wagons. Genesis records the names of Jacob's descendants and gives the household's total as 70 persons, including Joseph and the family already in Egypt. These names identify the small covenant family that enters Egypt, and will later emerge in Exodus as a numerous people. Jacob sends Judah ahead to Joseph to guide the family into Goshen. The brother who once led Joseph away from the family now leads the family toward him. Joseph prepares his chariot and goes to meet his father. When they see each other, Joseph falls on Jacob's neck and weeps for a long time. Jacob, who had said he would descend to the grave mourning, can now say that he is ready to die because he has seen Joseph's face and knows he is alive. Joseph handles the family's arrival with the same administrative care he used during the years of abundance. He tells Pharaoh that his relatives have brought their flocks and herds, and he prepares his brothers to answer questions about their work. Their identity as shepherds will allow them to settle in Goshen, a region suitable for livestock and separate from the center of Egyptian life. Pharaoh receives 5 of the brothers and grants the request. He even tells Joseph to place any especially capable men over the royal livestock. The family does not enter Egypt merely as hidden dependents of a powerful relative. They receive Pharaoh's permission to reside in the land and continue their occupation. Joseph then presents Jacob. The meeting contains a quiet reversal that would be easy to miss if we looked only at political rank. Pharaoh is the great king of Egypt, but Jacob blesses him both as he enters and as he leaves. The bearer of the Abrahamic promise stands before the ruler whose food is preserving the family, and speaks blessing over him. When Pharaoh asks his age, Jacob says that the years of his sojourning are 130. He describes them as few and difficult compared with the years of his fathers. Jacob has encountered God at Bethel, Peniel, and Beersheba, but he does not edit hardship out of his testimony. He has known family conflict, exile, fear, bereavement, and the consequences of his own deceptions. God's faithfulness and Jacob's difficult years belong in the same account. Joseph settles the household in the best part of the land, also called the region of Ramesses in Genesis, chapter 47. He provides food according to the number of their dependents. The authority that could have been turned against his brothers now feeds their children and gives the family room to grow. The chapter then turns from Joseph's family to the Egyptian population, where the moral picture becomes more complicated. The famine is so severe that Egypt and Canaan languish. Joseph sells grain and gathers the money into Pharaoh's house. When the people's money is exhausted, they ask why they should die in front of him, and Joseph exchanges food for their livestock. The following year, the people return. Their money and livestock are gone, leaving only their bodies and land. They ask Joseph to buy them and their fields for food and to give them seeds so they may live and the land may not become desolate. Joseph acquires the land for Pharaoh, and the people agree to serve Pharaoh in exchange for food and seed. The priests are the stated exception because Pharaoh already provides them with an allowance, so they do not have to sell their fields. Joseph then gives the people seed and establishes an ongoing arrangement. 1/5 of the harvest will belong to Pharaoh, while 4/5 will remain for seed and for food for the workers, their households, and their children. The people answer that Joseph has saved their lives and accept service to Pharaoh. The passage keeps both sides of the policy in view. Joseph's planning prevents mass starvation and restores cultivation after the worst of the famine. The people themselves recognize that they are alive because food and seed have been supplied. At the same time, the crisis transfers Egypt's money, livestock, land, and labor into Pharaoh's control. The policy preserves life while greatly increasing royal ownership. Genesis reports this outcome without pausing to give us a timeless economic program. It does not tell later rulers to copy Joseph's percentages, and the fact that Scripture records an action does not by itself settle every moral question about it. Joseph is administering stored grain within an ancient monarchy on behalf of Pharaoh. The narrative emphasizes survival and also tells us what that survival costs the population. The contrast becomes even more important when we continue into Exodus. Genesis does not say that Joseph's policies caused Israel's later enslavement. It does show, however, that power concentrated under one ruler can be used very differently by another. The Pharaoh who trusts Joseph and welcomes his family will not live forever, and a later king will use royal power to enslave the growing Israelites. No human system can be treated as a final refuge. After 17 years in Egypt, Jacob knows that his death is approaching. He makes Joseph swear not to bury him there. Jacob wants to rest in the cave of Machpelah in Canaan, the burial place Abraham purchased, and where Abraham, Sarah, Isaac, Rebekah, and Leah were buried. Egypt has provided food and safety, but it is not the land God promised to Abraham's family. When Jacob becomes ill, Joseph brings his 2 sons, Manasseh and Ephraim. These boys were born in Egypt to an Egyptian mother, and have spent their lives within Joseph's Egyptian household. Jacob formally claims them as his own, placing them alongside Reuben and Simeon. In effect, Joseph receives a double portion in Israel through his 2 sons, and both will become tribal names among the people. Jacob's sight is dim, but he deliberately crosses his hands when he blesses the boys. His right hand rests on the younger Ephraim rather than the firstborn Manasseh. Joseph tries to correct what he assumes is a mistake, but Jacob refuses. Manasseh will also become great, yet Ephraim will be greater. The reversal belongs to a pattern Genesis has already traced through Isaac rather than Ishmael, Jacob rather than Esau, and Joseph's elevation among his older brothers. God's purposes repeatedly move without being controlled by the ordinary claims of birth order. That pattern never excuses favoritism or deception, but it reminds the family that covenant blessing is received, not seized as a natural entitlement. Jacob then calls all his sons and speaks over them in Genesis, chapter 49. The words are not identical in form. Some recall character and past conduct, some describe future strength or vulnerability, and some reach toward the tribes that will descend from these men. Reuben's instability costs him the preeminence associated with the firstborn. Simeon and Levi are condemned for the violence they carried out at Shechem, and Jacob says they will be scattered in Israel. The family's preservation does not erase the moral record of its members. Judah receives royal language. His brothers will praise him. He is compared to a lion, and the scepter and ruler's staff are associated with his line. Some wording in this blessing is difficult to translate, so we should be cautious about claiming that every phrase has only one possible reading. Its broad direction is clear within the Bible's later story. Israel's enduring royal line will come through Judah in the house of David, and Christians recognize its fullest fulfillment in Jesus, whom Revelation calls the Lion of the tribe of Judah. That future gives Judah's offer for Benjamin even greater weight. The man who is willing to stand in the place of his brother becomes the ancestor of a royal line. His act is not the saving work of Christ in advance, but Christian readers can recognize a pattern that the gospel later brings to completion. The rightful king gives himself for others rather than preserving himself at their expense. Joseph's blessing is expansive. Jacob describes him as fruitful even though he was attacked and harassed. His strength endured because of the mighty one of Jacob, the shepherd and rock of Israel. The son who received Egyptian rank is blessed in the name of Jacob's God, and the fruitfulness Joseph has known in Egypt is placed within the covenant story. After speaking to all 12 sons, Jacob repeats his burial instructions. Then he dies and is gathered to his people. Joseph falls over his father, weeps, and kisses him. He orders the Egyptian physicians to embalm Jacob, a process that allows the body to be carried back to Canaan, and Egypt observes an extended period of mourning. With Pharaoh's permission, Joseph leads a very great company to the burial place. Members of Pharaoh's household, Egyptian elders, chariots, horsemen, Joseph's family, and Jacob's household travel together. The Canaanites who witness the mourning identify it as a grievous mourning of the Egyptians. The shepherd who once fled Canaan alone is carried home with public honor from the nation that sheltered his final years. After the burial, Joseph and his brothers return to Egypt. Jacob's death removes the father whose presence may have seemed to restrain Joseph, and the brothers become afraid again. They wonder whether Joseph has delayed revenge until now. They send a message saying that Jacob instructed Joseph to forgive their offense, and then they offer themselves as his servants. Genesis has not previously recorded Jacob giving that command, so the passage does not allow us to know whether the brothers are quoting him, appealing to what they believe he wanted, or protecting themselves with one more carefully framed message. What it makes unmistakable is that they still do not feel safe. Joseph weeps when he hears them. Their fear shows how difficult it is for guilty people to trust mercy, even after years of receiving provision. Joseph answers first by refusing a role that does not belong to him. He asks whether he is in the place of God. Then he gives the clearest interpretation of the entire story. The brothers intended evil against him, but God intended it for good in order to preserve many people alive. Joseph uses the same moral description for their act that their own confession required. It was evil. God's good intention did not exist inside their cruelty, as though the cruelty were secretly righteous. God brought a life-preserving purpose through events they meant for harm. Joseph tells them not to fear and promises to provide for them and their little ones. Genesis says he comforts them and speaks to their hearts. He does not take their land, demand their enslavement, or use their guilt to secure permanent control over them. He leaves judgment with God and uses his remaining authority to sustain the people who once sold him. Forgiveness in this account is neither denial nor forgetfulness. Joseph names the evil, observes his brothers under pressure, listens to Judah's offer, reveals himself, and continues providing for the family after Jacob is gone. The path cannot be turned into one rigid process for every wounded person. Scripture does not require someone in danger to restore immediate access to an unrepentant abuser. Joseph shows that mercy can remain honest about the harm and still seek the good of the people who caused it. The family has been saved, but Genesis is not finished until it shows us Joseph's own death. He lives to 110 years and sees later generations of his children. Near the end, he tells his brothers that God will surely visit them and bring them out of Egypt to the land sworn to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Joseph makes the sons of Israel promise to carry his bones with them when that day comes. Then he dies, is embalmed, and is placed in a coffin in Egypt. It is a surprisingly unresolved image. The man who interpreted Pharaoh's dreams, governed the famine, commanded storehouses, tested his brothers, and moved an entire household cannot carry himself home. His coffin remains in the land where the family has found refuge. The promise of God must reach beyond Joseph's ability and beyond Joseph's lifetime. The opening of Exodus will show that the family preserved through famine has multiplied into a people. It will also show a Pharaoh who does not know Joseph and turns Israel's growth into a reason for oppression. When God brings the people out, Moses takes Joseph's bones, just as Joseph required in faith. Much later, the book of Joshua records their burial in the Promised Land. The story still speaks directly to anyone entrusted with authority. Most people will never control a national food system, but power appears wherever one person can affect another person's safety, opportunity, reputation, or access to resources. It exists in families, churches, workplaces, public offices, and ordinary decisions about money and information. Joseph's administration asks whether resources are being prepared and used for actual human need. During the abundant years, he does not treat surplus as proof that scarcity can never return. He stores grain, organizes distribution, and gives seed when planting becomes possible. Responsible authority looks beyond the comfort of the present and asks who may depend on today's decisions later. With his brothers, Joseph does not mistake respectful words for a changed heart. He watches what they do when Benjamin is threatened. They return together, and Judah offers his own freedom. Power can force a performance, but it cannot manufacture that kind of change. For someone who has been harmed, Joseph's tears and caution belong together. He is not emotionally untouched, and he is not required to pretend that trust is automatic. His example leaves room for truth, boundaries, time, and attention to whether conduct has changed. It also moves toward provision rather than punishment once that change becomes visible. For anyone who holds authority over a person who has failed, the final scene places a firm limit around retaliation. Joseph will not take God's place. He has enough power to make his brothers spend the rest of their lives paying for what they did, yet he refuses to turn their guilt into his throne. He speaks truth about the evil and then feeds their children. The famine policy also warns that meeting an urgent need does not place every use of power beyond examination. Genesis keeps both results in view. Lives are preserved, and control becomes concentrated under Pharaoh. Christian readers eventually meet a greater use of authority in Jesus. Joseph's rejection and elevation form one part of the pattern, while Judah's willingness to take Benjamin's place forms another. Jesus brings those lines together without repeating every detail. The king from Judah uses his authority in self-giving service, bears the judgment of sin, rises from death, and offers a deliverance that no storehouse or earthly governor can secure. That connection does not make Joseph or Judah flawless. Genesis has been too honest about both men for that. It shows God preserving a deeply damaged family, bringing real change within it, and carrying his promise forward through people whose lives include faith, failure, wisdom, and grief. We can now return to the 10 men bowing before Egypt's governor. At that moment, Joseph has the food they need and the power they fear. By the end of Genesis, he has used that position to bring hidden guilt into speech, protect Benjamin, hear Judah offer himself in Benjamin's place, relocate Jacob's household, preserve Egyptians and Canaanites through famine, and provide for his brothers after their father's death. He also recognizes where his authority ends. He is not in the place of God. He cannot turn evil into good simply by calling it good, control the character of future kings, or carry his own bones to the promised land. He can only act faithfully within the authority he has received and entrust what lies beyond his lifetime to the God who promised to visit his people. Genesis closes, then, not with Joseph seated beside Pharaoh, but with Joseph in a coffin in Egypt. The position that once made him appear almost untouchable has passed away. What remains is the family kept alive, the evil honestly named, the promise still active, and a set of bones waiting for God to bring Israel home. If this careful walk through Joseph's final chapters helped you, subscribe to Bibles Slowly and share the video with someone reading Genesis. You can also leave a comment about which part of Joseph's use of power you find most difficult or most hopeful.